My name is Matt. I'm one of the pastors around here. So glad that you chose to be with us this morning. Those in the video venue or watching online, we're glad that you're with us as well. So I'm going to start off with this question. Do any of you have that one friend or family member who doesn't understand tone in texting? Do you have any of those friends? Like you spend like an hour like crafting the perfect words to the text that you're about to send, and probably another subsequent hour after that trying to figure out the right emojis to convey the right emotion, right, that you're worried about. And then it's just the pressure of like actually hitting send, which leads to kind of like a few minutes of agony or regret of what you should have said that you spent forever working on. Anyway, and then the anxiety of the three little dots are coming. What are they going to say? How are they going to respond? Is it going to be heartfelt and loving only to receive a K or sounds good, right? Like, yeah, they don't get it. Or maybe this one happens to me, at least in my marriage. This one's created just a few relational gaps. I'm sure you might have experienced this. It's where you spend forever, you plan the best date night is date night, and you find the restaurant that you guys have been talking about forever. You make the reservations, and you go ahead and you buy the tickets ahead of time for the show you're going to go see afterwards. And then on Instagram, you had seen this like new wine dessert bar that's nobody's heard about yet, and you get a reservation there as well, and you share all this with your wife. Hey, this is what I'm hoping for tonight. Is this something that you'd enjoy doing? Sure. What? I think we've all experienced that. The idea being words are tough, right? Words are hard for all of us. They're hard to determine what we should or what we shouldn't say. They're equally as difficult at times to understand the intention behind somebody else's words towards us, but words are so powerful. We all know this. Words can build somebody up or you can tear them down. They can create distance or they can draw us closer together. And we've been told this is an old adage that we've all heard, right? That actions speak louder than words. And that might be true when you're trying to size up a new like work relationship or a new acquaintance or something like that. But when it comes to actual real relationships, like personal relationships, romantic relationships, close friends, relationships within a church body. And I'm just not so sure that really works out, that actions speak louder than words, because the more intimate the relationship, the closer or tighter the friendship, the louder, or better yet, the heavier our words become as we speak. And because of that weight, the greater their capacity to leave a mark on somebody, either for good or for bad, to encourage or discourage, to inspire or to wound, to build each other up, as we've said so often throughout this series, or to tear each other down. Our words in those kinds of relationships are super powerful. So powerful that even words left unsaid have the power to change the trajectory of somebody's life. You know, one thing that's never happened to me, I've never once had somebody come into my office and have them explain to me something that a coworker or an acquaintance never said to them. That's never happened. But what has happened is I've sat across from somebody, usually through tears, and they share with me a 3 or 4 letter phrase that their father never said. I love you, and I'm proud of you. And if that elicits a response from you, whether that's your story or not, and that's not my story. I didn't grow up that way, thankfully, but nothing underscores the significance of our words more than the fact that even unsaid words have the power to change the trajectory of a person's life. The point being this, it's simply that words carry a ton of weight. No matter your experience, for good or for bad, our lives have been shaped by words spoken to us, over us, at us, and about us. These words have shaped our childhood. They've impacted and formed our marriages. They change our work environments. They impact and influence our experience within a church body. They shape the confidence of the person we see in the mirror. And while we're super quick to recognize how other people's words have impacted us, we're a little bit slower to acknowledge the impact that our words might have had on other people. Your words carry so much weight, more than you could ever imagine in all kinds of relationships. Words have the power to inspire and discourage, to build up and tear down, which should impact all of us. We should all be taking this into consideration, but there's a group of us in the room that must take this into consideration. I say this often when I'm preaching because I think it's true. Like, regardless of where you sit on the spiritual spectrum, right? Whether you believe everything what we're saying to be true, or you're still questioning whether or not you even believe a word of the Bible or that Jesus is who he says he is, no matter where you sit on this spectrum, what we're talking about today has the power to radically transform and impact your relationships. I think you can take this as good advice, implement it in the conversations you begin having with your friends and family, and it would change everything. But if you are a follower of Jesus, if you've placed your faith in him, if you're trying to walk with him, if you consider him leader and Lord of your life, then you must get this today. It's kind of baked in to what it means to be a follower of Jesus. And this is where we're at in this series. Over the course of the past 3 weeks, we've been looking at one chapter of a book of our Bible that's labeled Ephesians. It's a letter that the Apostle Paul wrote to the church in Ephesus, and that's kind of where we're at in the midst of this. We've been looking through what Paul has had to say because all he's really trying to help us do, all he's trying to help the church in Ephesus do is to become a mature, healthy body of believers with Christ at the head. We've been saying it every message. That's the goal. He's trying to help us have the church body and community that you desire and that I desire. Really just a mature body that loves each other and helps build each other up. And that's where we're at in today's message, where we're at in today's part of the chapter today. We're going to look at verse 25 to get started. Therefore, each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor, for we are all members of one body. And this speak truthfully idea, this isn't like be honest because being honest is nice. That's not his point. His point being is dishonesty actually fractures the body. And the word falsehood actually has a little bit more meaning than just straight up lying. Like, in fact, I believe for most of us, like straight up lying isn't our biggest issue. It's half-truths, it's kind of vague insinuation, it's image management. Have you ever thought, like, it's just, you're constantly trying to maintain an image for other people, and so you kind of have to twist some things. It's passive-aggressive statements with your friends. At times, it's instinctive and unintentional. Like, I believe that. But left uncorrected, it becomes what tears down relationships. And it's so instinctual. In fact, let me give you an example. The other day, a few weeks ago, I was preaching a sermon, and I was telling a story about somebody, just rambling off on this story, and I used the wrong name of the person in the story. Now, I knew that person wasn't in the crowd at the time, so I didn't feel the need to kind of backtrack and, actually the name was such and such. So I just kept rolling with it. And then after the message, somebody that I work with comes up to me and very kindly says, hey, just so you're aware, you said the wrong name. And what did I do? I meant to do that. I totally meant to do that. And then I just walked away. And I'm like, what's wrong with me? I'm broken on the inside that I can't just simply go, oh, you know what? I made a mistake. I just left it for some sort of image management thing. And then I got called out on it and I had to apologize. Like, that's how ridiculous this can be. It's so unintentional. It's so instinctual, even in the smallest things. And yet, if we leave it uncorrected, it can become what tears us down. It can become what ruins relationships. Neuroscience says this way, that lying is actually significantly more expensive on the brain than just simply telling the truth, which makes a lot of sense if you think about it, because every time we lie, we have to maintain two parallel paths in our brain. We have to remember what the truth is, and we have to remember the specific lie that we gave this individual, maybe the one we gave that one, and we've got to carry these two parallel lines together to maintain the image that we're trying to keep with people. And so Paul is just simply saying, hey, don't do that. Don't do that. Dishonesty is divisive, and it creates relational gaps. Verse 26. In your anger, do not sin, and do not let the sun go down while you are still angry. And do not give the devil a foothold. First thing for us to recognize right here is Paul's clear on something that is really important for us. He doesn't say that you're never going to get angry. He doesn't say never get angry. He says that anger is a signal. It's a signal. It's not a sin in and of itself. The question is what you do after you receive that signal. And Paul's big idea is speed is crucial. Don't let it sit. Don't let it marinate in your mind. Don't let it harden your heart, because unresolved anger doesn't stay as anger. Unresolved anger eventually becomes assumptions. It becomes distance. It becomes bitterness. Ultimately, it causes complete relational disconnect. And Paul says, when you let anger linger, you give the enemy a foothold. It's this idea of you give him a place at the table. You leave the door open for him. You give the enemy an opportunity to have influence in your life. And here's what's interesting. Even basic psychology would kind of tell you something very similar, that when you get angry, Your body goes into a stress response. The first thing that happens is your body gets flooded with adrenaline, your heart rate goes up, your thoughts narrow, your vision narrows, you start building a case against the other person, and when the moment ends, your brain stays super hot for quite a long time. That's why it's so easy for us to ruminate on these things, to spend our whole night with our head on the pillow, replaying the conversation, coming up with those great lines you should have said, how you could have just won the argument with this one little quick little line if you would have had it at the moment. And if you let that go unchecked long enough, anger stops being just an event that took place in your day, and it becomes the default action that happens anytime you get upset. You wake up the next day, you're already irritated. You're already aggravated and frustrated with the person that you had that conversation with. And Paul's warning is it's not just spiritual, it's deeply practical for us. He says, don't let anger become a groove, kind of a mental groove that you keep running back to. And here's the cultural problem for us. We live in an outrage economy. Everything in our lives is designed to keep us angry, to keep us frustrated and already guarded at all times and convinced of the fault of the other person. So when Paul says, don't let the sun go down on your anger, he's not just giving us a clever line. He's giving you a way to protect your soul. He's giving you a way to protect the body, our church, your relationships. A mature, healthy church doesn't avoid conflict, doesn't pretend like it's not happening. A mature church addresses it in the moment. Not perfectly, but quickly, because we're accountable to one another. So what does it actually mean to not let the sun go down? What does that look like? It doesn't always mean resolving everything in one night. We're gonna get a little practical, a little application point right in the middle of the sermon. Sometimes it means you do this before bed. I know this was kind of my default when I first got into marriage. I thought this verse meant I had to keep her up until she figured out I was right, which it didn't work out that well all the time. It didn't work out that well. Sometimes this means, hey, you take care of this before you leave the office for the day. Something frustrates you, and before you head home and let it linger, and you take care of it. Sometimes it means before you leave church on Sunday mornings, right? That's somebody that you're in a relationship with here, you take the time to do these few things, and I think it'll have impact. The first one is this: we name it. We name it. We say it out loud. Hey, I'm hurt. I'm angry. I'm upset. This bothered me. And then the second thing we do, this is super important, we set a time. We don't say, hey, man, I'm upset. Can we probably talk about this maybe sometime in the future? Right? We know how often that actually happens. We say, no, can we talk about it tomorrow? Hey, when we wake up tomorrow before we head off to work, can we just take a few minutes and just talk through this? When we get to the office tomorrow morning, would you mind coming and sitting with me? Because I don't want there to be distance between us. I want to take care of this as quickly as possible. And then you pray. And you don't pray that God would convince the other person that you're right. Like, that's not your prayer. You pray that you would not allow the enemy to have a foothold in your relationship. You pray that Jesus would give you wisdom and compassion and love for the other person. You pray that when you get into that conversation, that anger wouldn't take over and you could have a good conversation, ultimately come out reconciled and redeemed on the other side. That's what you pray for. Verse 28, anyone who has been stealing must steal no longer, but must work, doing something useful with their hands that they may have something to share with those in need. I think I'm going to preach a whole series on that one verse at some point. I really want to. But historians actually tell us that stealing was a very common part of first century Asia Minor at the time. Because at the time you had a lot of day workers, or you had like skilled laborers whose work was based on seasons. So whatever season it was in, they'd have a lot of work, but you get past that season and they would actually feel the need to steal just to simply provide for their family because they didn't have community to help take care of them. And Paul is saying this, and remember back to last week, Paul's saying, hey, that's old self stuff. That's old you stuff. That you is dead and gone. We need to put that off, and we need to put on something new. Now, as a follower of Jesus, we do something useful. We contribute to the greater community. This verse kind of seems a little bit out of nowhere in kind of the greater scheme of what Paul's talking about right here, but it's actually reiterating a kind of fill the gap idea, principle that we've touched on multiple times throughout this series. Paul is saying this. Paul is building an entirely new community ethic for these people. Stop taking and start contributing. Stop taking, start contributing. That's what he's saying. And I think we can infer, at least for our conversation today, even our words have the power to take or the power to give. Well, a good friend always used to say it this way, and it's a great word picture for me. He said, in every conversation, you're either taking from somebody's bucket or you're pouring into their bucket. in every conversation, and we have the opportunity to always be pouring into somebody else's bucket. Verse 29. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths. Growing up for me, this verse was used to try and convince me not to cuss. That's what it was used for, like unwholesome words in that sense. In fact, just yesterday, I got my nose hairs waxed, ripped out, and there were some unwholesome things. Don't ever do that. It hurts. But that's not what this verse is actually talking about. This verse is actually, the word unwholesome is actually translated stinky or gross or distasteful or rotten. That's what this word actually meant originally. In other words, he's saying, view your mouth as a gate. Stand guard at the gate of your mouth and don't let any stinky, rotten, hurtful words rush the gate. And if they do, don't let them through. Don't let them through. And let me just tell you this, we can stop right here. We could head home a few minutes early and work on that one thing. And if we did, I can guarantee you the people closest to you, relationally closest to you, maybe the people physically closest to you right now would be glad that we did. That we took the time to work on this, to stop letting nasty things get through our lips, because we all struggle with this. Because our mouth is a gate, and we're not, just as a people, we're not the best gatekeepers. And I know this is how you excuse it, because we're all kind of the same in this. I know I've excused my nasty, gross words towards people this way. I'm just being honest, bro. Just being honest. So let me say this. This has little to do with our sermon today. Little sidebar comment. Pastor Andy Stanley says this about honesty, and I love it. He says, honesty is making sure that what you say is true. Honesty is not saying everything that's true. One more time. Honesty is making sure everything you say is true. Honesty is not saying everything that is true. If you say everything that is true, you will have no friends. If you go around simply making observations about truth and everything, you'll have no friends, you'll have no relationships, you'll have no job. And so when you hear yourself giving hurtful, distasteful, rotten words to somebody, and you're excusing it with the phrase, well, I'm just being honest. Remember, you're not just being honest, you're being a jerk. Like, tell yourself that. And let me bring some clarity here. This is the beauty of coming to the second service. There's always people who walk out of first service and they're like, I didn't get that. Let me bring some clarity. I'm not saying that we're not honest. I am an honest freak. You can ask my wife and my friend. I want to be honest all the time. There's a way to be honest. There's a compassionate, loving, caring, humble way to be honest. And then there's a heavy, hurtful club way to be honest. So we're going to choose the compassionate, loving way and honesty. And we're not going to use honesty as an excuse for us to be a jerk. That's what we're going to do. Paul goes on. But only. Paul's saying, hey, stand at the gate. Be selective about what comes through. Check the ID. Clear plastic purses only, no backpacks. We're not letting anything out that's not supposed to be out. He says, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs. Again, this kind of sounds soft. It sounds wimpy. It sounds unproductive. I mean, can you really raise children this way? Right? Can you do a performance review at work this way? Can you challenge a brother or sister in Christ with this kind of words? And Paul would say yes. Paul's point is not only be nice. His point is to use words, to only use words that ultimately build somebody up. They're not always the easiest words, but they're the words that we believe will help somebody become more of who God created them to be. And so our words can be like construction materials, if you want to think of them that way. When you leave the construction site, meaning when you leave the conversation, whatever the conversation is, a positive conversation, not so positive, a hard conversation, the things that you say should finally and be the things that bring them to a point where they're built up, that when you leave the construction site of that conversation, that somebody's built up and not torn down. But in order for us to do that, for my words to ensure that the person on the other side of me is built up and not torn down, it means that I have to be a student of the other person. It means I have to pay attention to that person. I need to know what that person needs. I need to understand them. And that takes patience. It takes a lot of work. Because Paul says the goal is to choose words, to tailor words to their needs. And this is where a lot of us struggle. I know, again, I say this all, it's where I struggle. I'm confident that what they need to hear is what I need to say. And I'm so confident of that because after I say it, I feel so much better. Like I do. I've gotten it off my chest. I can sleep better at night. I mean, I've been honest with them. And I can't quite seem to figure out why it doesn't do the same thing for them, but at least I feel great. Because the truth is, I'd say the problem is most of us are more dialed into what we need to say than what they actually need to hear. And sometimes we hesitate to say what they need to hear because it's uncomfortable or we fear rejection from them. And before long, the conversation, again, it ultimately becomes about me. I select my words with me in mind. I say what's most helpful for me according to my needs, which is fine if I care more about me than I care about you. Jesus never did that, though. Jesus never made it about him. He always made it about others, the person on the other side of him, and he leads us to do the same with our words. And Paul concludes with this, to jump back, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that. And then this is our purpose. This is kind of the big win or the goal for every conversation that we have with somebody, that it may benefit those who listen. This is why it's not an option. It's not an option for us as followers of Jesus, because being a Jesus follower is an others first life orientation. Everything about our lives is others first, which means I need to choose my words with the needs of other people in mind. Not my need to get something off my chest, not my need to be honest, not my need to make myself feel better about myself. No, our words should build each other up at all times in hopes that we might become a mature body with Christ at the head. But when we get this wrong, and when, kind of the operative word there, our words can be so destructive. James, who I talk about a lot, I love James, my favorite book of the Bible. James is Jesus' younger brother, who I'm sure, if you could imagine, had plenty of unwholesome words for his brother growing up, because could you imagine if your brother was perfect? I mean, you'd throw some stuff out there every now and then, I'm sure. After finally relenting his disbelief in his brother, though, and beginning to understand and know that his brother was his Lord and God, James gave his life to him and followed him in every step of his life from that point forward. And he has this to say concerning the tongue. James says this in chapter 3. We all stumble in many ways. Anyone who is never at fault in what they say is perfect, able to keep their whole body in check. James is essentially saying, if you're able to control your mouth, man, you've made it. If you can control your mouth, you're on a whole nother level of maturity. And he continues with an analogy that we can all understand. It's pretty clear for us, something we've all seen the damage created by what he's about to say. And he says, consider what great a forest is set afire by a small spark. The tongue is also a fire. Your mouth is a spark. My words and your words have the potential to spark a flame that burns down a relationship, that burns down a marriage, that burns down somebody's life, that takes their self-esteem, that burns down their own self-confidence. And we know that because we've had other people's fire burn us. It's inflicted us. It's damaged us. The real danger in all this is fire spreads so stinking quickly. It's not an isolated thing. They start so small, but they don't stay small. A few words have the potential to create a great deal of harm in every relationship we walk in. Your words, if left unchecked, have the power to destroy our church. It could be the first spark that burns so brightly that ultimately it destroys what God has created here. And I think there's two things to do with an unintended or unintentional fire. The first one is contain it. We can contain it. When it comes to fires that we start with our words, our natural inclination is, let me contain this fire. That's why we explain it. That's why we explain what we said. And explaining is not containing. We think it is, but explaining, I think, is just pouring more fuel on the fire. And you know this, because when somebody's burnt you with their words, and then they come back with the explanation as to what they said, you know the fire burns brighter. because all they're doing is proving they don't even understand the words that they said and how badly they hurt you. And so we know it on this side, but yet we're so quick to do it when we're the ones to burn somebody else. Let me help you understand why I said that. Let me help you get a glimpse. I came at it this direction because of this, and you know that just pours fuel on the fire. And so when you realize you've torn somebody down instead of built them up, when you realize you've burnt somebody, don't try and contain it, extinguish it. Extinguish it. Word fires are extinguished with two things, and neither of them come naturally or easy to us as human beings. The first one is a big dose of humility. Pastor Brad preached a whole series on humility just a few weeks back. You can go back and listen to that. But humility means I'm going to put you and your interests and your well-being ahead of mine. Ahead of mine. Even if it costs me. Humility is placing oneself under and making oneself available to somebody else. Humility is actually the way we walk this out in life and love with other people. So humility, and the second thing is sensitivity. Insensitive words require sensitivity to allow the other person to be able to move past the hurt that you caused. Think of it this way, an explanation about why I said what I said, it only elevates me. It makes me the priority. It turns the whole conversation about me, but humility and sensitivity elevates the offended party, making what they need most important. So James says a tongue is a spark, and we all know how fast a spark can become a wildfire. And so to move forward, let's get painfully practical. Painfully practical with what we do when a word fire is about to start. Either one that we're starting with the words that we're saying, or I think so much more often when one's being started to us, when words are being spoken to us, we have a lot of power to extinguish that fire in that moment. So what do we do? What do we do to do that? The first thing is this. I think we replace assumption with curiosity. Sometimes we have the power to remove the fuel that causes a fire by being curious about what the other person said, by trying to bring clarity about what the other person said. And so we say things like, hey, help me understand what you meant by that. I'm not saying it's going to cure everything, but there's a lot of opportunity for you to say, hey, can I check my interpretation of what you just said? Hey, when you said blank, I heard blank. Is that really what you meant? And that curiosity has the power, at least it gives the option for the other person to explain it in a way that the word fire never even gets started. Number two, have one direct conversation. Fires spread fastest through side conversations, through gossiping and through venting to other people and through sarcasm. But instead go directly to the person and say, hey, can we talk? Can we talk for a few minutes? Let them know, hey, I want to have clarity because I don't want there to be distance between us. I don't want there to be separation between us. And then the third thing, and I actually do believe this. I think if the third thing that I'm about to say, if we got this, if this was the only thing we took away from the entirety of this series, our church will be better, your relationships will be better, everything could change if we got this, and that's repair quickly. Oftentimes we try to contain and we try and explain ourselves away, but explaining, like I said, it adds fuel to the fire. And so we're going to try this. This is a simple one. You don't need to write it down. I trust you can remember it. When we've said something that's burned somebody else and we realize it, we say, I'm sorry, with a period at the end. And it's the period that's the hard part, right? Because I'm sorry can flow out, but it usually is followed up with a but, or I'm sorry because I'm sorry, I shouldn't, whatever. We have to add something else. And let me give you this one. If you have to say something else, if you're so inclined, try this. I'm sorry, you didn't deserve that. You can add that one, that's fine. I'm sorry, I should have never said that. Like you can add that one too. If you have to say something else, but really I think I'm sorry extinguishes a lot of fires. It has the power to change a lot. Our ultimate aim with this series has been this, to learn how to build each other up. Because as we build each other up, we become the mature body that Paul is talking about. We become the church that I want to be a part of, that you want to give your life to, that we experience the fullness of what Jesus meant when he created this thing that we're still doing thousands of years later. We get to have that when we learn to build each other up and become that mature body. When we get it wrong, and we will, let's not attempt to contain the fire. Let's not explain ourselves away. Let's decide to be humble and extinguish it. It's the quickest way back to relational wholeness. So let me end by asking this question. It's a fun question. You can talk about it at lunch if you want to. Is there anyone who you've recently burned with your words? Anyone who you've recently burned with your words? Anybody in your family? A child, a spouse? Anybody in your life group? Anything ever come up there? Maybe a team you serve on here? Have you hurt somebody there? Have you burnt a leader within our church by gossiping about them behind their back? If there's a fire burning even hotter because all you've done is try and explain it away, to contain it, my challenge to you today is to extinguish it. When we're done here, take the step. Have the courage to say I'm sorry and extinguish and end that fire. And here's the reason we should do that, because here's what's awesome. Jesus has the power to forgive you for the things that you've said and done. And he also has the power to redeem and restore what we've damaged. But we do that through him and with him. Regardless of what you believe, I said it at the beginning, right? Regardless of what you believe on this spiritual spectrum about Jesus, about the Bible, whether or not you've been following him your whole life or not, all of this should be considered. All of this has the power to change your life. But if you're a follower of Jesus, it's not an option for us. This is actually what it looks like to follow Jesus. This is how we walk in the way of Jesus. And this is how we build each other up in love so that we become a mature body with Christ at the head. Would you pray with me, church? Jesus, I'm grateful, always, always grateful for the words that you've given us through Scripture so that we can be transformed and changed through the knowledge of your word. And so I pray that today you would do that. Ultimately, I pray that you would restore and redeem any broken relationships that I've caused or any of us in this room have caused, that you would bring wholeness back to relationship. We would know the fullness of what you've intended for us as a church. Help us to become the church that you've always dreamed we would be. We love you. Pray in your name. Amen. Well, thank you, church. You guys have a great week. We'll see you next Sunday.